This episode of The Apex and the Abyss contains graphic descriptions and audio that may be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Imagine being stripped of your humanity. You are no longer looked at as a person, but a project. You are observed, you are studied. Unbeknownst to you, you are the subject of someone's obsession. This compulsion can be a powerful motivator to some, and the insatiable desire for control can become all-consuming. The feeling is so immense, in fact, that it spills over into some unspeakable act. Even though you are ignorant to these actions, you know something isn't quite right. I think you all know the feeling I'm talking about. When something is slightly out of place, or that feeling you get when you're being watched. I believe it is a guttural instinct that we all have, the ability to sense danger when we have nothing else distracting our senses. You hear the echo of footsteps in the dark when there shouldn't be any, the snap of a branch making the world behind you feel unsafe. The hair on the back of your neck stands on edge. But you get enough courage to turn around to look and see. But there's nothing. So the feelings subside and you go about your business. Sometimes that's as far as it goes. It's an uneasy feeling that surmounts to nothing. But for one particular brand of monster, just looking and fantasy within his own mind wasn't enough. You're listening to The Apex and the Abyss, and this is the story of BTK.
Cops say the case that was once cold may be warm yet again. Back in the 1970s, a man known then as the BTK Strangler claimed responsibility for 7 murders. In his letters to media organizations, the killer used the initials BTK, standing for Bind, Torture, and Kill. They never caught that guy, and 25 years of silence have followed. And today, a Wichita paper says it received another letter claiming responsibility for an 8th victim who was killed in 1986.
On March 9, 1945, in Pittsburgh, Kansas, William and Dorothea Rader welcomed their son Dennis into the world. Dennis was the eldest of 4 children born to the couple, and the Raders would move to Wichita, Kansas soon thereafter and establish their roots in the largest city in Kansas. For all intents and purposes, Dennis seemed to have a normal childhood. He was a Boy Scout and a part of the youth group in his church. On the outside, a well-adjusted boy with a loving family. However, he would hold a grudge towards his mother due to the fact that she seemed to enjoy reading books and watching TV versus playing with her children. And also, she was the main disciplinary in the household. His father worked long hours and was not around for such things. So if you did something wrong in the Rader household, more often than not, Dorothea was the one to rear the children. Unbeknownst to those around him, however, something abnormal was festering inside of Dennis, something that would eventually take hold of him and become his obsession. He would state that he first felt the oddity when he was a young boy after an incident with his mother. She had accidentally hooked a ring she had been wearing on a couch spring beneath a cushion. She was stuck, and from Dennis's perspective, she seemed terrified as she asked him to go get help. This stirred a feeling within Dennis, a feeling that a psychologist who evaluated him later would label as his first feeling of arousal. He liked seeing someone in terror and helpless, a feeling that would grow stronger and stronger as he got older. By the time he was a teenager, Dennis had evolved those feelings into full-fledged fantasies. He dreamt of encounters that ended with bondage and torture of a person. Allegedly, he would even practice torture techniques on animals such as cats and dogs. However, Dennis was aware that these fantasies and actions were not normal, and that he would have to keep them hidden from those around him. And that's exactly what he did. Anyone who knew Dennis when he was younger would describe him as well-mannered, yet a quiet young man, perhaps even a little bit shy. Some would later state that he was very attentive when a person spoke, and also that he was very serious in nature. Humor was not his strong point. While he had his visible oddities, the mask that Dennis placed over what he truly was fooled everyone around him. Dennis would graduate from high school in 1963, and then take a 2-year break from school to work at a local grocery store. In 1965, he would move to Salina, Kansas to attend Kansas Wesleyan College. According to reports, Dennis did not do well academically. By the time it was mid-1966, Dennis would join the Air Force. He headed to San Antonio, Texas for his basic training, and then he went to Sheppard Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas for his technical training. During his 4 years in the Air Force, Dennis would be stationed all over the world, starting off in Alabama and then making his way to Japan, Korea, Greece, and Turkey. Other than traveling, Dennis's time in the Air Force was relatively uneventful. He would make it up to the rank of sergeant and receive a few honors such as the Good Conduct Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, and the Small Arms Expert Marksmanship Ribbon. By 1970, Dennis was discharged from active duty and would serve a further 2 years in reserves. Upon his discharge, Dennis moved back to Wichita, Kansas, and got a job in the meat department of the IGA Superstore. Soon after Dennis had settled back into his life in Kansas, he met and married a woman named Paula Dietz. Paula was a few years younger than Dennis, who was 26 years old at the time. But they had attended the same high school and knew each other from the area. So on May 22, 1971, the two married and purchased a home in Park City, Kansas. Over the course of the next few years, Dennis would leave his job at IGA and get hired at the Coleman Company, a popular camping supplies manufacturer. He would also attend community college and earn an associate's degree in electronics. By 1973, Dennis would move on from the Coleman Company to Cessna, a company that manufactured small aircrafts. He would also go back to school to Wichita State University at night in an attempt to earn a bachelor's degree in administrative justice. This degree would take him about 6 years to obtain. From Dennis's timeline, it appeared that once he graduated from high school, he had a very busy lifestyle. As they say, idle hands are the devil's playground. While the fantasies that Dennis had when he was younger were still in the back of his mind, it would appear that he hadn't acted on them in any violent way. Possibly due to the fact that his day-to-day was just so jam-packed with things like work, school, and a social life. But by the end of 1973, something would shift within Dennis that would push him over the edge, and once he was on the other side, he never looked back. Dennis would be laid off from his job at Cessna, and this caused him to fall into a mild depression. It is theorized that with no job and a rocky mental state, Dennis thought back to his fantasies of binding, torturing, and having control over a person. However, that wasn't enough for Dennis. Those acts were not quenching the insatiable thirst he felt when it came to those ideas. He decided that he was going to act on these fantasies and also take them a step further, to killing. Dennis had formulated a plan. He would hone in on an individual and label them as a project, completely dehumanizing them in his eyes. He would then meticulously watch a person or persons for a certain length of time. He needed to get to know them and their routines. This is what he would call his trolling and stalking phase. Once he figured out who his victim was and had their daily routine memorized, he would get together his hit kit. A hit kit contained items that he would need to execute his attack. Things like a change of clothes, weapons, gloves, something to tie his victims up with, and sometimes even a Polaroid camera. When he had all this together, he would strike. On January 15, 1974, Dennis Rader would commit his first known murder. Joseph and Julie Otero had recently moved from Panama to the Wichita area with their 5 children: Charlie, Danny, Carmen, Josephine, and Joseph Jr. Joseph Sr. was a retired Air Force flight instructor who was well liked by all. The same could be said for the rest of the family. They were all warm and likable people with seemingly no enemies to speak of. The morning of January 15, 1974 started out like any other. The children were getting ready for school and the typical hustle and bustle of a large family. Joseph Sr. took his son Charlie to school early that morning so he could partake in an extra study hall before regular classes started. Mr. Otero headed back home to his wife Julie and his 2 younger children, Josephine and Joey. Some reports state that Carmen and Danny were in the car as well and headed to school early. Other reports don't mention much at all. But suffice it to say, they weren't home at the time and they had gone to school. Somewhere between 7 and 7:30, Dennis Rader would cut the phone lines to the house and would enter through the back door of their home. It is believed that he made his way into the home when one of the children went to let the dog out. When Rader forced his way into the home, he was not expecting to see Joseph Sr. there. In all of his calculations, Joseph Sr. should have been gone by that time. However, Rader was unaware of the fact that Joseph Sr. had been in a car accident sometime before this attack, which resulted in him totaling his vehicle. So when Rader came upon the residence and saw that the car was gone, he assumed that only Julie and the younger kids were home. Dennis didn't want to have to deal with a man being in the house. He knew he would not be able to control the situation to his liking if he had to battle with a man. That was not part of his fantasy. Once he realized his error, Dennis would take out a gun and hold up the family. He told them that he was a wanted individual, that he needed food, money, and a vehicle, all of which was untrue. Dennis only wanted one thing out of this scenario, and it was to kill for his own sexual gratification. The detail of the murder of the Otero family was theorized by investigators once the crime scene was discovered. However, what truly went down was revealed by Dennis himself via a lengthy courtroom confession.
All right, Mr. Rader, I need to find out more information. On that particular day, the 15th day of January, 1974, can you tell me where you went to kill Mr. Joseph Otero?
I think it's 1834, Edgemore.
All right. Can you tell me approximately what time of day you went there?
Somewhere between 7 and 7:30.
This particular location, did you know these people?
No, that's no, that was part of my, I guess my what you call fantasy. These people were selected.
All right, so you
Oh.
you were engaged in some kind of fantasy during this period of time?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, when you use the term fantasy, is this something you were doing for your personal pleasure?
Sexual fantasy, sir.
I see. So you went to this residence, and what occurred then?
Well, I had did some thinking on what I was going to do to either Mrs. Otero or Josephine, and basically broke into the house, or didn't break into the house, but when they came out of the house, I came in and confronted the family, and then we went from there.
All right. Had you planned this beforehand?
To some degree, yes. After I got in the house, I lost control of it, but it was, you know, in the back of my mind, I had some ideas what I was going to do, but I basically panicked that first day. So
Beforehand, did you know who was there in the house?
I thought Mrs. Otero and the two kids, the two younger kids, were in the house. I didn't realize Mr. Otero was going to be there.
All right. How did you get into the house?
I came through the back door, cut the phone lines, waited at the back door, had reservations about even going or just walking away, but pretty soon the door opened and I was in.
All right. So the door opened. Was it open for you, or did something?
I think one of the kids, I think the junior, or not junior, yes, the younger, Joseph, opened the door. He probably let the dog out because the dog was in the house at that time.
All right. When you went into the house, what happened then?
Well, I confronted the family, pulled a pistol, confronted Mr. Otero, and asked him to, you know, that I was there. To basically, I was wanted to get the car. I was hungry, food. I was wanted, and asked him to lie down in the living room. And at that time, I realized that wouldn't be a really good idea. So I finally, the dog was a real problem. So I asked Mr. Otero if he could get the dog out. So he had one of the kids put it out, and then I took him back to the bedroom.
You took who back to the bedroom?
The family, the bedroom, the 4 members.
All right. What happened then?
At that time, I tied him up.
While still holding him at gunpoint?
Well, in between tying and yes. Yeah.
All right. After you tied them up, what occurred?
Well, they started complaining about being tied up, and I re-loosened the bonds a couple of times. Tried to make Mr. Otero as comfortable as I could. Apparently had a cracked rib from a car accident, so I had him put a pillow down for his head. Had he put a, I think he Parker or a coat underneath him. They talked to me about giving the car and whatever money. I guess they didn't have very much money, and there I realized that I didn't have a mask on or anything. They already could ID me, and made a decision to go ahead and put him down, I guess, or strangle him.
All right. What did you do to Joseph Otero Sr.?
Joseph Otero?
Yeah,
Okay.
Joseph Otero Sr., Mr. Otero, the father.
Put a plastic bag over his head, and then some cords, and then tightened it.
And this was in the bedroom?
Yes, sir.
Did he, in fact, suffocate and die as a result of this?
Not right away. No, sir, he didn't.
What happened?
Well, after that, I did Mrs. Otero. I had never strangled anyone before, so I really didn't know how much pressure you had to put on a person or how long it would take. But
was she also tied up there in the
yes,
bedroom?
yeah, both their hands and their feet were tied up. She was on the bed.
Where were the children?
Josephine was on the bed, and Junior was on the floor this time.
So we're talking, first of all, about Joseph Otero. So you'd put the bag over his head and tied it, and he did not die right away. Can you tell me what happened in regards to Joseph?
He moved over real quick, and I think tore a hole in the bag, and I could tell that he was having some problems there. But at that time, the whole family just went panicked on me, so I worked pretty quick.
You worked pretty quick.
Well,
I
strangled Mrs. Otero, and she went out, or passed out. I thought she was dead. She passed out. Then I strangled Josephine. She passed out, or I thought she was dead. And then I went over and put a bag on Junior's head, and then if I remember right, Mrs. Otero came back. She came back, and
Sir, let me ask you about Joseph Otero Sr. You
Senior?
indicated he had torn a hole in the bag. And what did you do with him then?
I put another bag over it, or either that, or if I recollect, I think I put either a cloth or a T-shirt or something over his head, and then another bag, and then tied it down.
Did he subsequently die?
Well, yes. I didn't just stay there and watch him. Then I was moving around the room. But
All right. So you indicated you strangled Mrs. Otero after you had done this. Is that correct?
now I went back and strangled her again, and that finally killed her at that time.
So this is in regards to count 2. You had, first of all, put the bag over Joseph Otero's head, and he tore a hole in the bag. Then you went ahead. Did you strangle Mrs. Otero then?
Okay.
Or did you go
First
back?
of all, Mr. Otero was strangled, or a bag put over his head and strangled. Then I thought he was going down, and I went over and strangled Mrs. Otero. I thought she was down. Then I strangled Josephine. Thought she was down, and then I went over to Junior and put the bag on his head. After that, Mrs. Otero woke back up, and she was pretty upset what's going on. So I came back, and at that point in time, strangled her for the death strangle at that time.
With your hands or what?
No, with a cord, with a rope. And then I think at that point in time, I redid Mr. Otero, put the bag over his head, went over, and then took Junior. Before that, she asked me to save her son. So I actually had taken the bag off, and then I was really upset at that point in time. So basically, when Mr. Otero was down, Mrs. Otero was down, I went ahead and took Junior. I put another bag over his head and took him to the other bedroom at that time.
What did you do then?
Put a bag over his head. I put a cloth over his head, a T-shirt, and a bag so he couldn't tear a hole in it. And he subsequently died from that. And then when I went back, Josephine had woke back up.
What did you do then?
And I took her to the basement and eventually hung her.
All right, you hung her in the basement?
Yes, sir.
All right, did you do anything else at that time?
Yes, I had some sexual fantasies. But that was after she was hung.
All right. What did you do then?
And went through the house, kind of cleaned it up. It's called the right-hand rule. You go from room to room. Picked everything up. I think I took Mr. Otero's watch. I guess I took a radio. I forgot about that, but apparently I took a radio.
Why did you take these things?
I don't know. I have no idea. Just
What happened then?
got the keys to the car. In fact, I had the keys, I think, earlier before that because I wanted to make sure I had a way of getting out of the house. And cleaned the house up a little bit, make sure everything's packed up, and left through the front door. And went over to their car, and then drove over to Dylan's, left the car there, then eventually walked back to my car.
If you notice in that audio, Dennis refers to the killing of the Otero family as putting them down, as if they are some sort of animals. He's completely emotionless and detached from the crime he committed. After Dennis fled the scene of his first crime, he went back to his normal day-to-day life. However, for the surviving Oteros, their lives were forever changed. Charlie Otero was walking home from school when he noticed that the family dog was left all alone outside, something that was quite unusual. When he entered the home, he asked if anyone was there, but there was no response, not until he heard the yells of his younger siblings, Carmen and Danny. They were in their parents' room, and they told Charlie that Mom and Dad were playing a mean trick on them. When Charlie entered the room, he was hit with the realization that his parents weren't playing a joke, but they were dead. The surviving Oteros left the house to get help. Unbeknownst to them, their younger brother lay motionless on the floor of his bedroom, and their sister was hanging from a pipe in the basement.
When we got to the police station, my mind was turning at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I'm trying to find out who to stab, who to shoot, who to hate, you know? And I go to the back and I tell the police to go to my brother and sister's school and stop Joey and Josie from going home. They cannot go home and find us like this. Bring them to me. I gotta have them with me right now. And the cop said, don't worry about it. We got it covered. It's taken care of. And I brought it up about 5, 6, 10 times. And they wouldn't tell me. They brought the chaplain to me and talked to me about, you know, having strength and being there for my brothers. And then finally one of them said, we got to tell you, Joey and Josie and Joey were in the house. And it blew me away. It just fucking killed me. And I went blank. I just went blank. Hate, just evilness, just it overcome me, you know.
When investigators arrived, they were horrified by the sight of a family who was murdered in broad daylight. When reporting on the case, the police withheld a great deal of details. What was released to the public was that there was 4 victims, all of which were strangled with a Venetian blind cord. What wasn't released was the fact that there was no such blind within the home. Another gruesome detail the police withheld was that it appeared that whoever killed the Otero family had also desecrated their bodies by masturbating on or near them. However, no member of the family had actually been sexually assaulted. Police were unsure of what the motive was to this crime. It most certainly wasn't a robbery or something along the lines of revenge. All that was missing from the home was Mr. Otero's watch. Upon further examination, the police believed that this killing had something to do with a violent and sexual fetish. Apart from the watch that was taken from the home, the killer did use the Otero's car, but left it at a nearby grocery store not far from their home, and it was found fairly quickly. This could possibly be where the killer, or rather, Dennis, left his personal vehicle, which he would then get into and flee the scene. 9 months after the brutal murders of the Otero family, Don Granger, who worked for the Wichita Eagle, received a phone call from an unknown man stating that there would be a letter inside of an engineering book in the Wichita Public Library confessing to the murders of the Otero family. Dennis had gotten wind of the fact that 3 individuals were taking credit for his murders, and his vapid narcissism could not stand such a slight. When found, the letter was examined and proved to be authentic. This letter had specific details about the crimes that only the killer would know. The letter was filled with incomplete sentences and grammatical errors. This is verbatim what the letter said.
I write this letter for you for the sake of the taxpayer as well as your time. Those 3 dudes you have in custody are just talking to get publicity for the Otero murders. They know nothing at all. I did it by myself with no one's help. There has been no talk either. Let's put this straight. I'm sorry this happened to society. They are the ones who suffer the most. It's hard to control myself. You probably call me a psychotic with sexual perversion hang-up. When this monster entered my brain, I will never know. But it here to stay. How does one cure himself? If you ask for help, that you have killed 4 people, they will laugh or hit the panic button and call the cops. I can't stop it, so the monster goes on, and hurt me as well as society. Society can be thankful that there are ways for people like me to relieve myself at time by daydreams of some victims being tortured and being mine. It a big complicated game my friend of the monster play, putting victims number down, follow them, checking up on them, waiting in the dark, waiting. The pressure is great, and sometimes he run the game to his liking. Maybe you can stop him. I can't. He has already chosen his next victim or victims. I don't know who they are yet. The next day after I read the paper, I will know, but it too late. Good luck hunting. Yours, truly guilty. P.S. Since sex criminals do not change their M.O., or by nature cannot do so, I will not change mine. The code word for me will be bind them, torture them, kill them. BTK. You see, he added again. They will be on the next victim.
Police requested that this letter be kept a secret. They did not want to rattle the public and open themselves up to more false confessions about crimes that this assailant was committing. The Wichita Eagle had no problem complying with this request of the police. However, a woman by the name of Kathy Henkel, who wrote for the Wichita Sun, would get her hands on a copy of this letter and printed a section of it in an article in December of 1974. Dennis gave himself the name of BTK, though he workshopped many ideas for what he wanted the public to know him as. Some would theorize that he took inspiration about interacting with the public from the likes of other serial killers like Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer in California. Dennis was well educated in criminal psychology, and as time would go on, he would study more and more about serial killers, a term that was coined right around the time that Dennis was committing his early crimes.
Back in the mid-'70s, when studying the problems at hand of violent offenders, I found one thing that was really lacking was a lexicon of terminology that would be appropriate to the study of violent offenders. The British were using the term series crimes for a series of repetitious, say, burglaries, property crimes, sexual assaults, series. So with the series crimes from England and serial from the American movie scene, I figured that serial murder would be a good term to lay to the repetitious and multiple violent offender.
Dennis's urge to kill did not stop with the Otero family. On April 4, 1974, Dennis would break into the home of Catherine Bright. Catherine was on a list that Dennis had put together of potential quote-unquote projects. He had spotted her entering her home while patrolling an area in his car. On this particular day, Dennis would break into Catherine's home while she wasn't there and wait for her to come back. However, things did not go the way in which Dennis had planned, because when Catherine returned, she had her brother Kevin with her.
All right, Mr. Rader, we will now turn to count 5. In that count, it is claimed that on or about the 4th day of April, 1974, in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you unlawfully killed Catherine Bright, maliciously, willfully, deliberately and with premeditation by strangulation and stabbing, inflicting injuries from which she did die on April 4th, 1974. Can you tell me what occurred on that day?
I don't know how to exactly say that. I had many, what I call them projects. They were different people in the town that I followed, watched. Kathleen Bright was one of the next targets, I guess, as I would indicate.
How did you select her?
Just driving by one day, and I saw her go in the house with somebody else, and I thought that's a possibility. There was many places in the area, College Hill, they're all over Wichita. But anyway, it just was basically a selection process. Work toward it. If it didn't work, I just move on to something else. But my kind of person is stalking and scrolling. You go through the trolling stage and then a stalking stage. She was in the stalking stage when this happened.
All right, sir. So you identified Kathleen Bright as a potential victim.
Yes, sir.
What did you do here in Sedgwick County then?
Pardon?
What did you do then here in Sedgwick County?
On this particular day,
yes.
I broke into the house and waited for her to come home.
How did you break into the house?
Through the back door on the east side.
All right, and you waited for her to come home. Where
yes,
did
sir.
you wait?
In the house there, probably close to the bedroom. I walked to the house and kind of figured out where I'd be if they came through.
All right. What happened then?
She and Kevin Bright came in. I wasn't expecting him to be there. And come to find out, I guess they were related. That time I approached them and told them I was wanted in California, needed some car. Basically the same thing that I told the Turtles. Kind of ease them, make them feel better. And proceeded to, I think I had him tie her up first, and then I tied him up, or vice versa. I don't remember right now.
Now let me ask, you indicated you had some items to tie these people with. Did you bring these items, both the Oteros and to this location?
The Oteros I did. I'm not really sure on the Brights. There was some, when I was working with the police, there was some controversy on that. Probably more likely I did, but if I had brought my stuff and used my stuff, Kevin would probably be dead today.
Right.
I'm not bragging on that. It's just a matter of fact. It's the bonds I tied him up with that he broke them. So,
all right.
And maybe same with Catherine. It got out of hand.
All right. Now you indicated that you believe you had Kevin tie Catherine up. Mm-hmm. Tell me what happened then.
Okay. I moved. After I really can't remember, Judge, whether I had her tie him up or she tied him up. But anyway, I moved her to another bedroom, and he was already secure there by the bed. I tied his feet to the bedpost, on the bedpost, so he couldn't run. Kind of tied her in the other bedroom, and then I came back to strangle him. And at that time, we had a fight.
Were you armed with a handgun at that time also?
Yes, I had a handgun.
What happened when you came back?
I actually had two handguns. I started strangling. Either the parent broke or he broke his bonds, and he jumped up real quick like. I pulled my gun and quickly shot him. Hit him in the head. He fell over. I could see the blood, and as far as I was concerned, I thought he was down and was out, and then went and started to strangle Catherine. And then we started fighting because bonds weren't very good, and so back and forth we fought.
You and Catherine?
Yeah, we fought. And I got the best of her, and I thought she was going down, and then I could hear some movement in the other room. So I went back, and Kevin, no. I thought she was going down, and I went back to the other bedroom where Kevin was at, and I tried to re-strangle him at that time. And he jumped up, and we fought, and he at that time shot me because he got the other pistol that was in my shoulder here. I had my Magnum in my shoulder. So
shoulder holster. Did you have it in a shoulder holster?
Yes, and I had the Magnum in my shoulder holster. The other one was a .22. And we fought at that point in time, and I thought it was going to go off. I jammed the gun, stuck my finger in there, jammed it, and I think he thought that was the only gun I had because once I either bit his finger or hit him or something got away, and I used the .22 and shot him one more time. And I thought he was down for good that time.
All right, so you shot him a second time.
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
Went back to finish the job on Catherine, and she was fighting. And at that point in time, I've been fighting her. And then I heard some. I don't know whether I was basically losing control. The strangulation wasn't working on her, and I used a knife on her.
You say you used a knife on her.
Yes.
What did you do with the knife?
I stabbed her. She said either stabbed 2 or 3 times, either here or here. Maybe 2 back here and 1 here, or maybe just 2 times back here.
You were pointing to your lower back and your
underneath the ribs.
And your lower abdomen.
Yeah, underneath the ribs, up underneath the ribs.
So after you stabbed her, what happened?
Actually, I think at that point in time, well, it was a total mess because I didn't have control on it. She was bleeding. She went down. I think I just went back to check on Kevin, or at that basically same time I heard him escape. It could be one of the two. But all of a sudden the front door of the house was open and he was gone. And I'll tell you what I thought. I thought the police were coming at that time. I heard the door open. I thought, no, that's it. And I stepped out there, and I could see him running down the street. So I quickly cleaned up everything that I could and left.
All right, now, Mr. Rader, you indicated that at the Oteros you did not have a mask on. Did you have a mask on at the Brights?
No, I didn't.
All right, so what happened then?
I already had the keys to the cars, and I thought I had the right key to the right car. I ran out to their car, and I think it was a pickup out there, and I tried it, didn't work, and at that point in time he was gone, running down the street. I thought, yeah, I'm in trouble. So I tried it, didn't work, so I just took off, ran, and went east, and then worked back toward the WSU campus where my car was parked.
All right, so you had parked your car at the Wichita State University
campus?
campus?
On the campus,
How far away was the Brights residence?
Oh, I parked, was that 13th? And they were on 13th. Was it 17th? Yeah. I was just about 1 block south of 17th where the car was. There's a park there. I parked at that park, and then I walked to 13th to the Brights residence. So I basically ran back.
All right, so you were able to get to your car and get away.
Yes, sir.
Apart from the confession that you just heard, Dennis did not like taking credit for this crime. He was not able to maintain control of the situation from the get-go, or live out his fantasy. Since Kevin escaped and Catherine fought hard against him, Dennis had to act quickly and flee the scene as fast as possible. After Kevin got out of the house, him and Catherine were eventually rushed to the hospital. Kevin would remain in critical condition, but would ultimately survive the attack. Unfortunately, after many hours of surgery, Catherine Bright would succumb to her injuries. She was just 21 years old at the time of her death. Since there was no communication from the so-called BTK Killer, police didn't immediately connect the murders. After the attack on the Brights, Dennis was silent for 3 years. This was until he set his sights on Shirley Vian. On March 17, 1977, Dennis would select Shirley at random and kill her. According to Dennis, he had been stalking someone else. When he went to his potential victim's home, they were not there. He had mentally prepared himself to kill someone that day, and no matter what, he was going to go through with it.
Now let's turn to count number 6. In that count, they claim on March 17, 1977, in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you unlawfully killed Shirley Vian maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which she did die on March 17, 1977. Can you tell me what you did on that day?
As before, Vian was actually on that one, she was completely random. There was actually someone across from Dillon's was a potential target. It was called Project Green, I think. I had project numbers assigned to it. And that particular day, I drove to Dillon's, parked in the parking lot, watched this particular residence, and then got out of the car and walked over to it. It's probably the police report, the address. I don't remember the address now. Knocked. Nobody answered it. So I was all keyed up, so I just started going through the neighborhood. I'd been through the neighborhood before. I kind of knew a little of the layout of the neighborhood. I've been through the back alleys, knew where some certain people live. While I was walking down Hydraulic, I met a young boy and asked him if he ID some pictures. Kind of was a Russ, I guess, or Roos, as you call it, and kind of feel it out. And saw where he went. And I went to another address and knocked on the door. Nobody opened the door, so I just noticed where he went and went to that house, and we went from there.
Now you call these projects, were these sexual fantasies also?
Potential hits. In my world, that's what I call them.
All right. So
They're
you
called projects, hits.
All right, and why did you have these potential hits? Was this to gratify some sexual interest? Or?
Yes, sir. I had a lot of them, so it's just if one didn't work out, I just moved to another one.
All right. So, as I'm to understand it, then on the 17th of March, 1977, you saw this little boy go into a residence, and you tried another residence. No one was there. You tried another residence. No one was there, so you went to the residence with a little boy.
And I watched where he went.
What happened then?
After I tried this once residence, nobody came to the door. I went to this house where he went in, knocked on the door, and told him I was a private detective. Showed him a picture that I had just showed the boy, and asked him if they could ID the picture. And at that time, I had the gun here, and I just kind of forced myself in. I just walked in, just opened the door, walked in, and then pulled a pistol.
What gun? What pistol?
357 Magnum.
So you only had one gun with a pistol?
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
I told Mrs. Diane that I had a problem with sexual fantasies, that I was going to tie her up, and that I might have to tie the kids up, and that she would cooperate with me at that time. We went back. She was extremely nervous. I think she even smoked a cigarette. And we went back to one of the back areas of the porch, explained to her that I had done this before. And I think at that point in time, I think she was sick because she had her nightrobe on. And I think if I remember right, she had been sick. And I think she came out of the bedroom when I went in the house. So anyway, we went back to her bedroom, and I proceeded to tie the kids up, and they started crying and got real upset. So I said, "Oh, this is not going to work." So we moved them to the bathroom. She helped me, and then I tied the doors shut. We put some toys and blankets and odds and ends in there for the kids, make them as comfortable as we could. We tied one of the bathroom doors shut so they couldn't open it, and she went back and helped me shove the bed up against the other bathroom door. And then I proceeded to tie her up. She got sick, threw up, got her a glass of water, comforted her a little bit, and then I went ahead and tied her up, and then put a bag over her head and strangled her.
All right. Was this a plastic bag also?
Yes, sir. I think it was, but I could be wrong on that.
You put a bag.
It was something. I'm sure it was a plastic bag. Yeah.
You say you put a bag over her head and strangled her. What did you strangle her with?
I think on that I had tied her legs to the bedpost and worked up with the rope all the way up, and then what I had left over, I looped over her neck.
All right, so you used this rope to strangle her.
Yes, I think it's the same one that I tied her body with.
What happened then?
Well, the kids were really banging on the door, hollering and screaming, and then the telephone rang, and they had talked about earlier that the neighbor was going to check on them, so I cleaned everything up real quick and got out of there, left, and went back into my car.
And when you say you cleaned everything
well, I mean, put my stuff, I had a briefcase, whatever I had laying around, the ropes, tape, cords, I threw that in there, whatever, that I had that I brought in the house.
Had you brought that to the bride residence also?
Now, there is some, I think there was some basic stuff, but I don't remember bringing total stuff like I did to some of the others.
Was this a kit that you had prepared?
Yeah, yes, I called my hip kit.
All right, sir. You left the Vian residence, and had you parked your vehicle near there?
Still in the same parking lot there at Dillon's, at Hydraulic and Harry? Lincoln and Hydraulic.
Steve Relford, Shirley's son, was only 5 years old at the time of this attack. He recalls seeing his mother's murder through the crack of a door.
I watched him put that bag over her head and rope tied around her neck. That killed me.
The connections were being made by police, the media, and the people of Wichita, Kansas. BTK could strike at any time. He was not afraid to attack his victims during the day, and he appeared to be an uncatchable man. On December 8, 1977, BTK would break into the home of Nancy Fox.
All right, in count 7, it is claimed that on the 8th day of December 1977 in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you unlawfully killed a human being, that being Nancy Fox, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation, by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which the said Nancy Fox did die on December 8, 1977. Can you tell me what you did on that day here in Sedgwick County?
Nancy Fox was another one of the projects. When I was trolling the area, I noticed her go in the house one night. Sometimes anyway, I put her down as a potential victim.
Let me ask you one thing, Mr. Rader. You used that term when you were patrolling the area. What do you mean by that?
It's called stalking or trolling.
So you were not working in any form or fashion?
I don't know. If you read much about serial killers, they go through what they call the different phases. That's one of the phases they go through as a trolling stage. You're looking for a victim at that time, and that you could be trolling for months or years. But once you lock in on a certain person, then you become stalking, and that might be several of them. But you really home in on that person. They basically become that's the victim, or at least that's what you want to be.
You said trolling with a T, not a trolling.
You did say trolling. That's why he said trolling.
Oh, okay.
All right.
No, I wasn't working, sir.
All right.
No, this was off my hours.
All right. So you basically identified Nancy Fox as one of your projects. What happened then?
At first, she was spotted, and then I did a little homework. I dropped by once to check the mailbox to see what her name was. Found out where she worked. Stopped by there once at Hillsburg. Kind of sized her up. The more I knew about a person, the more I felt comfortable with it. So I did that a couple of times. And then I just selected a night, which was this particular night, to try it, and it worked out.
All right. Can you tell me what you did on the night of December 8th, 1977?
Now, about 2 or 3 blocks away, I parked my car and walked to that residence. Knocked at the door first to make sure, see if anybody was in there, because I knew she arrived home at a particular time from where she worked. Nobody answered the door, so I went around to the back of the house, cut the phone lines. I could tell that there wasn't anybody in the north apartment. Broke in and waited for her to come home in the kitchen.
All right. Did she come home?
Yes, she did.
What happened?
I confronted her, told her there I was had a problem, sexual problem, that I would have to tie her up and have sex with her. She was a little upset. We talked for a while. She smoked a cigarette. While we smoked a cigarette, I went through her purse, identifying some stuff. And she finally said, well, let's get this over with so I can go call the police. And I said, okay. And she said, can I go to the bathroom? And I said, yes. She went to the bathroom. And I told her when she came out to make sure that she was undressed. And when she came out, I handcuffed her. And I don't really remember whether... Sir?
You handcuffed her? You had a pair of handcuffs?
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
Well, anyway, I handcuffed her, had her lay on the bed, and then I tied her feet. And then I was also undressed to a certain degree. And then I got on top of her. And then I reached over, took either her feet were tied or not tied. Anyway, I think I had a belt. I took the belt and then strangled her with the belt at that time.
All right. After you had strangled her, what happened then?
Okay. After I strangled her with the belt, I took the belt off and retied that with pantyhose, real tight. Removed the handcuffs and tied those with pantyhose. can't remember the colors right now. I think I maybe retied her feet, or if they hadn't already. They were probably already tied, her feet were. And at that time, masturbated, sir.
All right. Had you had sexual relations with her before?
No. I told her I was, but I did not.
All right. So you masturbated, then what did you do?
Dressed and then went through the house, took some of her personal items, and kind of cleaned the house up, went through it, and checked everything, and then left.
After Dennis had murdered Nancy Fox, he would call an emergency hotline and let them know that there was a homicide at Nancy Fox's address.
Dispatcher? Yes, you will find a homicide at 843 South Pershing. Nancy Fox. I'm sorry, sir, I can't understand you. What is the address? 843 South Pershing. That is correct.
Police were able to pinpoint the exact phone that Dennis used to call in his crime. When police arrived, the receiver was hanging off the hook. Witnesses would state that they saw an individual who was about 6 feet tall with blonde hair on the phone. This, paired with Kevin Bright's hazy description of his attacker, didn't give police much to go on. The recording of BTK's voice was also so poor in quality, it was not helpful in figuring out who this killer was. Upon finding Nancy Fox's body, police discovered that her license was missing. Authorities believe that the killer took this as a trophy. Also at the scene, semen was discovered on a nightgown near her body, though an autopsy would prove that she was not sexually assaulted. The police were hesitant to label the murders occurring as serial killings, but after a certain point, they had no choice. The people of Wichita now knew the truth. Dennis would reach out to the media multiple times, especially in frustration. He was curious as to how many people he would have to kill before his name would be broadcast all over the news. As if his ego didn't sound inflated enough, Dennis would even write them a poem dedicated to Shirley Vian, called Shirley Locks, and one about Nancy Fox called Oh Death to Nancy.
Oh death to Nancy, what is this that I can see? Cold icy hands taking hold of me, for death has come, you all can see. Hell has opened its gate to trick me. Oh death, can't you spare me over for another year? I'll stuff your jaws till you can't talk. I'll bind your legs till you can't walk. I'll tie your hands till you can't make a stand. And finally I'll close your eyes so you can't see. I'll bring sexual death unto you for me. BTK.
Dennis's wife Paula would actually find a rough draft of the poem Shirley Locks on a chair in her home. Dennis had shoved it down into a cushion when he was interrupted writing it, and forgot it was there. Paula would eventually find it and question Dennis about it. He would come up with an excuse that it was for an assignment in school because they were discussing BTK and his murders. Believing her husband at his word, Paula moved on from the topic. However, she wouldn't forget about it later down the line, especially when more and more would be released about BTK and his writings. She would even turn to her husband and reference the fact that he misspelled words, just like BTK. After Nancy's murder, Dennis would become obsessed with a woman named Anna Williams in April of 1979. He stalked her, memorized her movements, and was ready to strike. However, things did not go according to plan with his attack on Anna. Dennis would break into her home when she wasn't there, cut her phone lines, and then patiently wait in her closet. However, Anna stayed out with her friends late into the night. This was not in line with Dennis's plan, so he was forced to leave without living out his fantasy. When Anna returned, she noticed that her home had been broken into, and her phone was dead, but no one was there. Dennis, in his frustration and love to torment, would write Anna a poem called, Oh Anna, why didn't you appear?
Oh Anna, why didn't you appear? 'Twas perfect plan of deviant pleasures so bold on that spring night, my inner felling hot with propension of the new awakening season, worn wet with inner fear and rapture, my pleasure of entanglement like new vines at night. Oh Anna, why didn't you appear? Drop of fear fresh spring rain would roll down from your nakedness to scent to lofty fever that burns within. In that small world of longing, fear, rapture, desperation, the game we play, fall on devil ears. Fantasy spring forth, mounts to storm fury, then winter calm at the end. Oh, Anna, why didn't you appear? Alone, now in another time span, I lay with sweet enrapture garments across most private thought. Bed of spring moist grass, clean before the sun, enslaved with control, warm wind scenting the air, sunlight sparkle tears in eyes so deep and clear. Alone again I trod in past memory of mirrors, and ponder why for number 8 was not. Oh, Anna, why didn't you appear?
After his attempted attack on Anna, correspondence with the BTK Killer ceased. But the people of Wichita remained frightened, buying things such as weapons and security systems to arm themselves from a man who would sneak into homes like a ghost. However, the boogeyman everyone feared disappeared. But what the people of Wichita didn't realize is that he may have stopped committing murders, but BTK was still living amongst them. At this point in Dennis's life, he had 2 children, a full-time job, and was going to school. His time for trolling and stalking was extremely limited, so this caused the lull in his serial killings. He had to keep up his facade of being a well-adjusted family man. After a few years, authorities would focus on other cases, and the BTK Killer case would move to the back burner. With no new leads and nothing more to go forward with, the case began turning cold. Police thought the culprit behind these attacks may have died, gone to jail or a mental institution, or simply moved to another location to commit such heinous acts. There was no real way of knowing. They didn't ignore the case by any means. Throughout this time in the early to mid-80s, police would reinvestigate the crimes, collect DNA from hundreds of suspects, and continue to dig. Unfortunately, nothing was coming from it. By the summer of 1984, investigators set up a task force called the Ghostbusters and used those in the technological field to try and attempt to discover the identity of BTK. They had so much evidence they believed if they just put it together in the correct way, they would be able to figure it all out. Within this task force, the investigators were able to figure out one major factor in all of the murders. They were all within a 4-mile radius of one another. This indicated to them that BTK felt comfortable in this area, which means he was familiar with it. This task force was also able to use the letters and the other correspondence with BTK to put together a suspect list. This list would consist of about 225 white males, all of which lived within the area and attended local colleges. Despite the task force's movements on the case, there was still not a word or indication that BTK was still active. That is, until April 27, 1985. Maureen Hedge lived down the street from Dennis Rader for many years. They weren't close by any means, but they knew each other in passing. During this time, Dennis was a Boy Scout leader and was on a camping trip. He would sneak away at some point during this trip and go back to Park City to find Maureen Hedge. During his public confession sometime later, he would never state that he was on a camping trip, but would say that he had a commitment, which is what he called anything that took him away from his stalking, trolling, and killing.
In count 8, it is claimed that on or about the 27th day of April 1985 to the 28th day of April 1985 in Sedgwick County, Kansas, it is claimed that you unlawfully killed a human being, Maureen Hedge, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which Maureen Hedge did die on April 27, 1985. Can you tell me what occurred on that day?
Well, actually, kind of like the others, she was chosen, going through the different phases, stalking phase, and since she lived down the street from me, I could watch the coming and going quite easily. On that particular date, I had another commitment. I came back from that commitment, parked my car over at Woodlawn and 21st Street, at bowling alley there at that time. Before that, I dressed until I had some other clothes on, changed clothes. I went to the bowling alley, went in there, the precincts of bowling, called a taxi, had a taxi take me out to Park City. I had my kit with me as a bowling bag.
All right, that was Park City in Sedgwick County,
Yes,
Kansas?
sir. Uh-huh.
All right, you had the taxi take you to Park City. What happened then?
There, I pretended that I was a little drunk. I just took some beer and forced it around my mouth, and the guy could probably smell the alcohol on me. I told him to let me out so I could get some fresh air, and I walked from where the taxi let me off over to her house.
All right, where does she live?
62, 42, 54, 6254, 6254, North Independence.
All right, when you walked over there, what happened next?
Well, as before, I was going to have sexual fantasies, so I brought my kit, and lo and behold, her car was there. I thought, gee, she's not supposed to be home. So I very carefully snuck into the house, kind of like a cat burglar, and after checking the house, she wasn't there. So about that time, the doors rattled, so I went back to one of the bedrooms and hid back there in one of the bedrooms. She came in with a male visitor. They were there for maybe an hour or so. He left. I waited till wee hours in the morning, and then proceeded to sneak into her bedroom and flip the lights on real quick, or I think the bathroom lights. I didn't want to flip her lights on, and she screamed, and I jumped on the bed and strangled her manually.
All right. Now, were you wearing any kind of disguise or mask at this time?
No.
You indicated this woman lived down the street from you. Did she know you?
Casually, we'd walk by and wave. She liked to work in her yard as well as I liked to work. It's just a neighborly type thing. It wasn't anything personal. I mean, just a neighbor.
All right, so she was in her bed when you turned on the lights in the bathroom?
Yeah, the bathroom, so I could get some light in there.
All right, what did you do then?
I manually strangled her when she started to scream.
So you used your hands?
Yes, sir.
And you strangled her? Did she die?
Yes.
All right, what did you do then?
After that, since I was in the sexual fantasy, I went ahead and stripped her, and probably went ahead and, I'm not sure if I tied her up at that point in time. But anyway, she was nude, and I put her on a blanket, went through her purse, some personal items in the house, figured out how I was going to get her out of there. Eventually moved her to the trunk of the car. Took the car over to Christ Lutheran Church. This is with the older church. And took some pictures of her.
All right, you took some photographs. What kind of camera did you use?
Poor
Did you keep those photographs?
Yes, the police probably have them.
All right, what happened then?
That was it. She went through. I tied it. She was already dead, so I took pictures of her in different forms of bondage, and that's probably what got me in trouble was the bondage thing. So anyway, that's probably the main thing. But anyway, after that, I moved her back out to the car, and then we went east on 53rd.
All right, what occurred then?
Sir?
What happened then?
Trying to find a place to hide her, hide the body.
Did you find a place?
Yes, I did.
Where?
Couldn't tell you without looking at the map, but it was on 53rd, between Greenwich, maybe. What's the other one between Greenwich? Webb. I think between Webb and Greenwich, I found a ditch, a low place on the north side of the road, and hit her there.
All right, you say you hit her there.
Well, there were some trees, some brush, and I laid that over the top of her body.
All right, so you removed the body from the car, put her in the ditch, and then laid some brush over the body.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Maureen's murder was different just for the sheer fact that he took her body somewhere else after he had killed her. Dennis typically left the home after a murder, but not with her. He would later state that he took her to the church so that he could have his way with her when it came to his fantasies with bondage. Then, on September 16, 1986, Vicki Wegerle, a beautiful mother of two, became Dennis Rader's 9th victim.
Sir, in count 9, it is claimed on or about the 16th day of September 1986 in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you unlawfully killed a human being, Vicki Wegerle, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which said Vicki Wegerle did die on September 16th, 1986. Can you tell me what you did here in Sedgwick County on that day that makes you believe you are guilty?
Yes. Again, Vicki was another potential victim. I went through those different phases, locked in on her, as I would call it, and decided that I would try that date. I used Roos as a telephone repairman to get in their house. Drove there in my own personal car around lunchtime, during lunch hour, or approximately that time. It was earlier in the morning than that. And I actually went somewhere else and changed my clothes, what I call my hit clothes. And,
hit clothes?
Hit clothes. Basically different, things that I need to get rid of later. Not the same kind of clothes that I had on. I don't know what other better word to use it, crime clothes or hit clothes. I just call them hit clothes. Anyway, I walked from my car as a telephone repairman. As I walked there, I donned the telephone helmet. I had a briefcase. Went to one other address just to kind of size up the house. I'd walked by it a couple times, but I wanted to check it a little bit more. As I approached it, I could hear a piano sound. And went to this other door, knocked on them, and told them we were recently working on telephone repairs in the area. And went to her and knocked on the door and asked her if I could come check her telephone lines inside.
Did she allow you in?
Yes, she did.
What happened then?
Went over and found out where the telephone was, simulated that I was checking the telephone. I had a make-believe instrument, and after she was looking away, I drew a pistol at her and asked her if she'd go back to the bedroom with me.
Is this the same .357 Magnum you used?
No, this was a different one.
Different pistol. Or you asked her to go back to the bedroom with you after drawing a pistol on her?
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
I told her, we went back to the bedroom, I told her I was going to have to tie her up. She was very upset, and I think I used some material that was in, and that's another thing, I'm not sure, but I think I used the material that they had in their bedroom, and after I tied her hands, she broke that and we started fighting, and we fought quite a bit, back and forth.
All right, she was physically fighting you?
Oh, yeah, yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
What happened then?
Finally got the hand on her and got a nylon sock and started strangling her.
So you wrapped the stocking around her neck?
Yes.
What happened then?
I finally gained on her and put her down, and I thought she was dead, but apparently she wasn't. But after she was down and not moving anymore, I rearranged her clothes a little bit and took some quick photos. I think 3 of them, if I remember. And then after that, there was a lot of commotion. She had mentioned something about her husband coming home, so I got out there pretty quick. The dogs were raising a lot of cane in the back. The doors, the windows were all open to the house. There was a lot of noise when we were fighting. So I left pretty quickly after that. Put everything in the briefcase and had her. I'd already gone through her purse and got the keys to the car and used their car for my getaway car.
All right, now you indicate that you thought that she was dead. Did you discover later that she was not dead?
Yes, I guess the paramedics arrived and they tried to attempt to revive her, and that failed. I don't know if she died there or on the way to the hospital or at the hospital. I don't recollect.
But you later found out that she did die as a result of your strangulation.
Yes.
After Dennis strangled Vicki to death, he took her car. Vicki's husband Bill would later state that as he was driving on his street towards his home, he would pass what he thought was his wife's car, driving in the opposite direction of his house. But it was a man in the driver's seat, so clearly he must have been mistaken. Little did he know that that was Dennis Rader. When Bill entered his home, he was startled to find his 2-year-old son by himself in the living room. When he walked through the house, he saw no signs of Vicki. Her body was laying on the other side of the couple's bed, hidden from view if you just peeked into the room. After some time, though, Bill would find Vicki laying on the floor of their room. Vicki would be taken to the hospital, but after a few hours, she would be pronounced dead. A few years would pass yet again with no sign of BTK. Those who had been involved investigating the case believed that he was still out there, living amongst the community like a wolf in sheep's clothing. They knew it would only be a matter of time before he struck again. A killer like this just doesn't stop, and he would kill one final time in 1991. Dolores Davis lived within 2 miles of Dennis Rader's home. He had noticed her one day when he was driving around. Dennis would use a Boy Scout camping trip as another cover for his whereabouts. Dennis would pack an extra pair of clothes in his hit kit and change when he went to break into Dolores' home. He would walk around 2 miles across a field to reach her house that was secluded from others. Unlike his other attacks, Dennis did not sneak in. He would take a cement block and break a window to enter the house.
Now, sir, let's turn to count 10. In that count, it's claimed that on or about the 18th day of January 1991 to the 19th day of January 1991 in the county of Sedgwick, state of Kansas, that you did then and there unlawfully kill a human being, that being Dolores E. Davis, maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which the said Dolores E. Davis did die on January 19th, 1991. Mr. Rader, please tell me what you did here in Sedgwick County, Kansas on that day that makes you believe you're guilty.
That particular day I had some commitments. I left those, went to one place, changed my clothes, went to another place, parked my car, finally made arrangements on my hit kit, my clothes, and then walked to that residence. After spending some time at that residence, it was very cold at night. Had reservations about going in. I had cased the place before, and I really couldn't figure out how to get in, and she was in the house, so I finally just selected a concrete block and threw it through the plate glass window on the east and came on in.
All right, where is this residence located?
It's on Hillside, but I couldn't give you the address. I know it's probably 61, probably 62 something. Oh, 62 something.
North or south?
North Hillside.
All right, so you used a concrete block to break the window?
Mm-hmm. Plate glass window, patio door. Mm-hmm.
What happened then?
Noise. I just went in. She came out of the bedroom and thought the car had hit her house, and I told her that I used the roofs of being wanted. I was on the run. I needed food, car, warm up, and I asked her. I handcuffed her and kind of talked to her. Told her that I would like to get some food, get her keys to her car, and kind of rest assured, talked with her a little bit, and calmed her down a little bit, and then eventually I checked. I think she was still handcuffed. I went back and checked out where the car was. Simulated getting some food, odds and ends in the house that I was leaving. Then went back and removed her handcuffs and then tied her up, and then eventually strangled her.
Or you say eventually strangled her?
Well, after I tied her up, I went through some things in the room there and then strangled her.
You said you went through. Were you looking for something?
Mm-hmm. Well, some personal items. Yes, I took some personal items from there.
Did you take personal items in every one of these incidents?
I did on the hedge. I don't remember anything of Vicky's place. We have Cheryl's. We got the watch and the radio. I don't think I did any Brights. Vians, no, I don't think so. Fox, yes, I took some things from Fox. It was hit and miss.
All right. But
probably if it was a controlled situation where I had more time, I took something. But if it was a confusion and other things, I didn't, because I was trying to get out of there.
All right. So in regard to the Davis matter, you went around the room, took a few personal things. What did you do then?
Strangled her.
What did you strangle her with?
Pantyhose.
All right. What happened then?
Kind of like Mrs. Hedge. I already figured out I had a plan on leaving and put her in a blanket and drug her to the car and put her in the trunk of the car.
So you were able to strangle her to death with these pantyhose?
Yes, sir.
All right. You put her in your car?
In her car.
Her car.
The trunk of her car.
What happened then?
I really had a commitment I needed to go to, so I moved her to one spot, took her out of her car. This gets complicated. Then the stuff I had, clothes, gun, whatever, I took that to another spot in her car, dumped that off. Okay. Then took her car back to her house, left that. Let me think now. Okay. In the interim, I took her car back to her house. In the interim, I realized that I had lost one of my guns. I dropped it somewhere. So we saw it, trying to figure out where my gun was. So I went back in the house, realized I had dropped it when I broke the plate glass window. It dropped and fell on the floor right there, and I found it right there. So that solved that problem. Anyway, I went back out, threw the keys, checked the car real quick, and threw the keys up on top of the roof of her house, walked from her car back to my car, took my car, drove it back, and I either dropped more stuff off or I picked her up and put them in my car. And then I drove up northeast of Sedgwick County and dropped her off underneath the bridge.
Dennis would later state that Dolores' murder would fuel his fantasy for years. He would think back to it time and time again whenever what he would call Factor X would rear its ugly head. Factor X is what he believed caused his desire to kill. When it came to the investigation into BTK after many years, it had dialed back due to resources. However, the case was still open and being looked into. Though for years, nothing would come from it. In fact, 13 years would pass between Dolores' death and the next contact from BTK. In March of 2004, BTK would send a letter to the Wichita Eagle claiming responsibility for the murder of Vicki Wegerle. He would send a photocopy of her driver's license that he stole and photographs of her dead body, photos that crime scene investigators did not take. They knew that this was the real deal, and simultaneously, any thought that Bill Wegerle had murdered his own wife had been sussed out, something that he had been suspected of since Vicki had been found. Investigators would also notice that the name on the letter's return address was Bill Thomas Kilman, initials BTK. Why after all this time would BTK resurface? Some would theorize that the killer craved the attention he had for decades, and since his name was being forgotten, he wanted to remind the people of Wichita that he was still there, and he was still watching closely. Just like years before, once BTK was back and all over the news, people panicked. Those who had lived in the area during the peak of his crimes remembered the palpable fear of not knowing who was going to be chosen as his next victim. Things such as weapons and security systems were on the uptick. The people of Wichita were gearing up to protect themselves. In May of 2004, BTK would send another letter, this time to a television station. Within these letters, BTK would quote-unquote reveal a lot about himself to the public. For instance, he would write that he was born in 1939, he was a veteran, and that he had a fascination with trains. He would also state that he had a job fixing copy machines. Some of these facts would clearly prove to be untrue, and was most likely Dennis's attempt to play with the police and the public. In these letters, he would also include puzzles such as word searches for investigators to decipher. While Dennis loved taunting the police, he was also setting himself up for capture. In June of 2004, just like back in the 70s, a letter from BTK was found in an engineering book at the Wichita Public Library. However, instead of being on the shelf like before, this book was placed in the drop box. Within this letter, BTK would mainly talk about the Otero family murder. In October, another letter was found. This time, it was in a UPS drop box by the Omni Center building in Wichita, Kansas. This letter happened to coincide with the 30th anniversary of BTK's first letter to the public. Within this letter were drawings of people and children in various stages of bondage. While gathering evidence as time went on, investigators began evolving their profile of BTK. Given the 30-year time span, they believed him to be a man somewhere between 50 to 60 years old, with a medium build and graying hair. A fairly predictable and basic physical profile given the information they had regarding his appearance in the mid-70s. They knew that whoever BTK was, that he was highly educated, meticulous, and calculated. Investigators were purposely being misled by him with random anecdotes and clues he would provide in his letters, which they were well aware of, but they needed to comb over everything on the off chance that he would slip up and reveal who he really was. Towards the end of 2004, an unknown man would find a white bag that was wrapped in rubber bands at a local park. Inside, he would find a copy of Nancy Fox's driver's license, a doll that had its hands and feet bound with a plastic bag over its head, and a letter. In January of 2005, BTK would leave a cereal box in the bed of a pickup truck at the local Home Depot. When the owner of the truck saw this, he believed it to just be trash and discarded it. BTK would inquire as to what happened to his cereal box via another message to the police, and it was later located in the trash. With this tip, Dennis hadn't realized that the police could go and look at the surveillance tapes of the parking lot of that Home Depot. When they did, they were able to see that whoever threw the box in the bed of the truck was driving a black Jeep Cherokee. Even though it was grainy, it was the first glimpse at who BTK was. This was a huge moment for the investigation, and the police kept that momentum going. In February, BTK would send more letters, and another cereal box was found that had another doll inside of it. This doll was bound and had a noose around its neck. The noose was attached to a PVC pipe, mimicking the murder of Josephine Otero. BTK, or rather, Dennis Rader, wanted to toy with them as long as he could, but he didn't realize that this would be his greatest mistake. Dennis would write a letter to police asking them if he were to send them a floppy disk, would there be any way that they could trace the information back to him. Believing the police respected him enough not to lie to him, they told him no, they would not be able to trace anything back to him. But of course, anyone with any basic computer knowledge knows that this is a lie. On February 16, 2005, Dennis would send a purple floppy disk to a TV station in Wichita. In the package there was also a letter, a gold necklace, and a photocopy of a book cover, Rules of Prey, which is a novel about a serial killer. On the floppy disk, police were able to locate metadata from a deleted Microsoft document. The metadata contained information about the Christ Lutheran Church, and the document was last modified by a user named Dennis. Police were able to find out that a Dennis Rader was the president of the church's council. He was a 60-year-old man who lived in the area, and when police drove by his house while doing surveillance, they noted that there was a black Jeep Cherokee in the driveway, just like the one spotted in the parking lot of the Home Depot the month before. Police believed that they had their man, but they wanted concrete evidence against him. They wanted to leave nothing to circumstance, so they prepped to gather DNA to test against the multiple samples they had from BTK's prior murders. The police were able to obtain a warrant to gather DNA evidence from a pap smear that had been given to Dennis's daughter. The DNA showed that there was a strong familial relationship between her and the BTK killer. With this evidence, police arrested Dennis Rader. They finally captured BTK.
The bottom line, BTK is arrested.
Dennis had been taken into custody while he was driving by his home. When asked if he knew why he was being arrested, he stated he had a suspicion as to why. While being interrogated, it took a while for him to actually come clean that he was in fact BTK. But eventually, he would. Dennis was quite annoyed that law enforcement had the nerve to lie to him about the floppy disk, even asking detectives, quote, "I need to ask you, how come you lied to me?" The detective would respond, "Because I was trying to catch you." Dennis would be interrogated for a grand total of 32 hours. He would confess fully and candidly to all 10 murders. Police would search Dennis's home and the church where he was president of the council. They would locate a stockpile of evidence. They would find items belonging to victims, drawings of torture chambers, news clippings of the attacks, and photographs of Dennis himself wearing women's undergarments and masks. In some of the photos, he would be bound to a chair. In one, he would be hanging from a noose in what looks like the woods, and in another, he would be almost entirely covered in dirt. You never see Dennis's face in these photos. He is wearing a baby doll mask. These photos were proof that he would relive his crimes over and over again, and that he just had this full-on obsession with bondage and torture. He would later state that he almost got caught on a camping trip taking one of these photographs, when he was unable to get himself out of his own binds. The public was breathing an immeasurable sigh of relief to know that BTK had finally been caught, though they were still in a state of shock as to who the killer turned out to be. Dennis Rader looks like an average Joe. Some will claim that he looks terrifying and evil, which is a valid assessment, But is it only because we know what a true monster he is? But for all intents and purposes, Dennis was considered a family man, a churchgoer, a scout leader, and a hard worker. Dennis, after a slew of different jobs that were previously mentioned, would also work at ADT, a home security company. He worked there from 1974 to some point in the 1980s. By 1991, he had become a compliance officer in Park City. Those who knew him would later state that Dennis's demeanor would change once he put on that uniform. As a compliance officer, he had authority. Those who lived in Park City had to listen to him if he was following up on complaints or noticed things that weren't up to code. He would go so far as measuring people's lawns with a ruler and chasing stray dogs with a tranquilizer gun. It is quite obvious that Dennis used this position to help deal with his dark fantasies. He would even harass one woman in particular over her dog to the point where the animal was euthanized. Dennis Rader's family had a hard time believing that the man they knew and loved could be such a vicious murderer. But once he confessed, all hope that this was all just a misunderstanding was extinguished. People would question his family as to how they couldn't know what Dennis truly was, but the answer seems fairly obvious. He was just that good at hiding it. There would be one instance where they saw a glimpse of his rage. An argument between Dennis and his son broke out, and Rader would place his hands around the boy's throat, something that would inevitably be pushed under the rug and not really addressed among the family. It was just a fight that got out of hand. However, hindsight is 20/20. Dennis's wife Paula would divorce him in 2005, very quickly after his arrest. On February 28, 2005, Dennis would be officially charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder. At first, Dennis's attorney would enter in a not guilty plea, but on June 27th, Dennis would change the plea to guilty. In a televised hearing, Dennis would coldly recount each murder in detail. He showed no remorse for what he had done and spoke as if each killing was a technical procedure. On August 18th, Dennis would face the victims' families, where they would get the chance to read impact statements. Some were off the cuff, and some were riddled with despair.
My name is Stephanie Klein. My mother is Vicki Wagerly. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of myself and my brother Brandon. It's been almost 19 years now that my brother and I had the most important woman in our lives taken from us. My brother and I had to go through so many important moments in our lives without her. Every day is a struggle to get through without her. It's not fair that we had so little time with her. I only had 10 years with her. Brandon only had 2. Anyone who knew my mom knew how much she loved her family. She loved her children, her husband, her parents, and her sister. She loved her in-laws like they were her own parents, brothers and sisters. She adored her nieces and nephews. Even her friends were considered family to her. There's nothing she wouldn't do for any one of us. We didn't have enough time with her. It's not fair that her 3 grandbabies will never get to know her. She doesn't get to see me with her grandchildren, and she doesn't get to see her baby Brandon with his first child. My mom would so love the fact that that baby girl looks just like Brandon did when he was little. She won't ever get to hold them or watch them grow up. She would have loved being a grandma. It's not fair that my 4-year-old son has to ask why his Mima can't come home. He draws her pictures. We should be able to take these to her, but they just sit on the fridge. Even at 4, he knows it's not right that she should be here with us. And what did my baby do to deserve feeling this way? What did any of us do to deserve this? My mother begged for her life, yet he showed no remorse. He saw that she had a family and a little boy right there in the house with her, yet he continued with his sick plan. I ask you today, Your Honor, to show no remorse for him. Don't let this monster have any comforts as he lives out his remaining years in prison. He isn't worthy. Thank you, Your Honor.
And some were filled with rage towards the monster that took their loved one away from them.
I'm Jeffrey Davis, son of Dolores Davis, BTK victim, January 18, 1991. May it please the court to allow me to express my thoughts and feelings to all the victim survivors here among us today, in the hope that we can leave this courtroom with some sense of peace and legal resolution. For the last 5,326 days, I have wondered what it would be like to confront the walking cesspool that took my mother's precious life. Throughout that time, I always envisioned this day as being one for avenging the past. I could think of nothing but savoring the bittersweet taste of revenge as justice is served upon this social sewage here before us today. Now that it has arrived, surprisingly, I realize that this day is not just about avenging past crimes. Sitting here before us is a depraved predator, a rabid animal that has murdered people, poisoned countless lives, and terrorized this community for 30 years, all the while relishing every minute of it. As such, there can be no justice harsh enough or revenge bitter enough, in this world at least, to cause the pain and suffering which a social malignancy like this has coming. Therefore, I have determined that for the sake of our innocent victims and their loving families and friends with us here today, for me, this will be a day of celebration, not retribution. If my focus were hatred, I would stare you down and call you a demon from hell who defiles this court at the very sight of its cancerous presence. If I embraced bitterness, I would remind you that you are nothing but a despicable, child-murdering, cowardly, impotent eunuch and pervert masquerading as a human being. If I were the animal that you are, I would say that I relish the thought of you being treated to the same despicable brutality, terror, and agony at the hands of your soon-to-be fellow inmates that you relished inflicting on your defenseless victims. If I were spiteful, I would remind you that it is only fitting that a twisted, narcissistic psychopath obsessed with public attention will soon have his world reduced to an isolated, solitary existence in an 80-square-foot cell. If I embraced bitterness, I would remind you that you are nothing but a despicable, child-murdering, cowardly, impotent eunuch and pervert masquerading as a human being. If I were the animal that you are, I would say that I relish the thought of you being treated to the same despicable brutality, terror, and agony at the hands of your soon-to-be fellow inmates that you relished inflicting on your defenseless victims. If I were spiteful, I would remind you that it is only fitting that a twisted, narcissistic psychopath obsessed with public attention will soon have his world reduced to an isolated, solitary existence in an 80-square-foot cell, doomed to languish away the rest of your miserable life alone. If I had your devil nature, I would delight in the fact that your congregation has turned its back on you, that your friends have deserted you, that your wife has divorced you, that your own children have disowned you, and then I would remind you that you will never have any warm, loving human contact again for the remainder of your twisted existence. If I were cynical, I would remind this court that you would return to your murderous ways in a heartbeat if given the opportunity. So for the safety of society, you must remain caged forever like any other vicious, predatory animal. If I were to sink to your level, I would say that this world would have been much better off had your mother aborted your demon soul before you were unleashed on this world, sparing 10 innocent lives and avoiding untold heartache for this community. If I were vindictive, I would wish you many long, emotionally tortured years in your cage, haunted every night by your victims' hopeless pleas for mercy as you played God and pronounced their death sentences upon them. If I had your sadistic nature, I would delight in the pain you feel now in realizing that your own arrogance and ego got you caught, that if you just kept your big mouth shut, you'd still be a free man today, able to eat pizza and walk your dog Dudley. If I wanted revenge, I would pray that you develop a lingering illness from which you suffer for many, many years before you ultimately choke to death one lonely night on your own vomit. If I were judgmental, I would call you the most despicable form of hypocrite for profaning Christianity by daring to associate yourself with my faith and for blaspheming God's house with your demonic actions. If I were unforgiving, I would tell you that I will accept any shameful, meaningless attempts on your part to feign remorse by responding that I will grant you forgiveness the same day that hell freezes over, although I know that my mother in her Christian grace has already long since forgiven you. But I won't hurl these invectives at you, or I won't rain these curses down upon you, because you're not smart enough to understand most of the words I would use anyway. And even if you could begin to fathom the depth of my hatred for you, I would still refuse to waste any breath on you, because that would once again allow you the satisfaction of being in the limelight, and that attention I refuse to allow you. As of today, you no longer exist. Today, the focus finally moves out from under the shadow, your depraved shadow of hell's darkness, into the light of your victims and their families. Speaking for my mother with us in spirit, for my own family, and I hope for the entire family of survivors here today, we dedicate this day to the memories of those who cannot be with us. Today, we also celebrate with this community the relief in knowing that we will never again be terrorized by a monster's demented fantasies. Today, we will each silently remember a father, a brother, a wife, a mother, a sister, a daughter, a grandmother, all those we loved so deeply and miss so dearly still. Today we will quietly reminisce on all that they meant to us. We will smile at all the silly things they did that made us laugh, and we will renew our pride in who they were. Today we will thank them for shaping our lives, for being there when we needed them, for setting the example of what we should be, for making us who we are, and for allowing us to be their living legacies. From this point on, we declare our independence from the tyranny of your actions. While you begin your slow and painful descent into hell, we will choose to rise above our pain. While you sink into an emotional abyss of hopelessness and despair, we will channel our grief into positive endeavors, those life activities which would please the ones we have lost. While you agonize over the reality that your last victims were ironically your own family, we will embrace the new family we now have, with whom we will always share a common bond forged from the pain of adversity and loss. While your body wastes away in prison, we will renew ourselves by incorporating into our lives those characteristics modeled by our loved ones: humility, compassion, honor, integrity, kindness, selflessness, and love. Traits which your twisted, cancerous mind cannot comprehend, I realize. While your wretched soul awaits pronouncement of the one true justice, your damnation to hell for eternity, we will thank God for every day He gives us, realizing as only we can just how precious life really is. Finally, we want you to know that we who could so easily have succumbed to your quagmire of madness will not give you that satisfaction. Your despicable actions will not defeat us. Our very lives will be testimony that good can triumph over even the most hideous form of evil and perversion. Just as your days are now over, ours are just beginning. In the final analysis, you have to live with the cold reality that while all of us here will overcome your depravity, you have now lost everything, and you will forever remain nothing. May that torment you for the rest of your tortured existence. Thank you, Your Honor.
After listening to all of the victim impact statements, Dennis would make a statement to the court and to those whose lives he affected. In this speech, you can truly see how far out of touch Dennis is with reality when it comes to the gravity of his actions. He compares his love of poetry and drawing with his victims, not acknowledging the fact that the poems and drawings he created depicted their brutal murders.
Rader, do you desire to say anything on your own behalf in mitigation of punishment?
Your Honor, Sedgwick County, victims, we do realize that the crimes I've committed, the atrocious crimes I've committed, has continued as the Sedgwick County is a monster. It brought the community, my family, the victims, dishonor. And it's all self-centered, as I would call a sexual predator. Today is my final judgment. For me, the last couple of days in court, presented by the state, their PowerPoint presentation was very powerful. A couple of things I might point out toward the last, but overall, most of that was true. And I think the Sedgwick County ought to be proud that they do have a good state, that the evidence was there earlier, DNA, Floppy. There was no way that I was going to get out of this. With remorse, responsibility, and corrections are the concepts of apology. The old me started whatever it was, Factor X, sexual predator. The volcano was the building of all those years was the Otero. And probably the most devastating, upsetting, what I mean to everybody, is Josephine. I just don't know. Self-centered, very selfish, and it exploded on that day. And it did continue, off and on. Dishonesty? Definitely. Dishonesty, probably the first thing to the people that I encountered, that they trusted me, that I was willing to tie them up, take their money, and leave. And then I killed them. That's dishonesty for my family. Lie and cheat to be self-interest to my employers and to the county. No, the taxpayers' money. Pride and responsibility. Yes, I had pride back then. To some degree, I'm trying to drop down to that, but that's the media. I seem to crave the attention of the media. I think through the years that was quite presentation during the presentation and all the archives that I have, you can understand that. I think the bottom line of the old is selfish, very disassociated with society, self-centered for my own purposes, and I take that full burden on my shoulders.
Dennis Rader would be sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences with the minimum of 175 years in prison. At the time that Dennis committed these crimes, Kansas did not have the death penalty. It was reinstated in 1994, 3 years after his last murder. Some would theorize that Dennis Rader has committed more than 10 murders, but refuses to acknowledge them after his 1991 crime because he does not want to face the death penalty. This theory is a stretch, seeing how much Dennis loved to boast about his crimes, in great detail, and no evidence has ever indicated that there were more victims. The only thing the evidence did prove was that he was in the midst of prepping for another murder. Thankfully, he was caught before he ever carried it out. Dennis would be taken to the El Dorado Correctional Facility in El Dorado, Kansas. It has been said that when the victim impact statements were played on the radio in the car on the way there, he began to cry, the only sign of emotion that he ever showed. But is it because he was truly regretful for what he had done? Or is it because he knew he was about to spend the rest of his days in a concrete box? We will never know the answer to that question, but we can speculate. Dennis now spends the remainder of his days in solitary confinement, so that he is protected from the other prisoners. He is allowed 1 hour of exercise per day and a shower 3 times a week. Due to good behavior, he is now allowed to read and watch television in his cell. As recently as 2017, Dennis would send letters to the Wichita Eagle writing about a cancer scare he had experienced. This prompted him to write out his last will and testament. He has requested that when he dies that his remains be cremated and that his writings and artwork be put together in some sort of book. His daughter Carrie would state that this is something her father brings up at random, and she believes it is to fuel his need for constant attention, still to this day. Dennis's family has disowned him since they discovered who he truly is back in 2005. Personally, Carrie has never visited her father, but she will correspond with him via letter from time to time. It appears as though, even after spending numerous years in prison, Dennis hasn't changed. He hasn't learned from his crimes, and what we can tell from his letters that he sends out, he still only has his selfish needs on his mind.
There was always a feeling, even after I retired, that was the one case that we weren't able to solve or identify the killer. And then to have him resurface, of course, brought hope again that maybe a new investigation, new forensics, new minds, new detectives on the case, and might bring this to a solution.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Apex and the Abyss. If you want to chat, feel free to reach out on Twitter, Instagram, or send me an email at apexandabyss@gmail.com. You can support the show in many ways. You can head on over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review the show. You can become a monthly donor on Patreon, or you can purchase some show merchandise. All the links will be posted in the show notes. Have a great week, everyone. Until next time.
I'm Carmen Julie Otero Montoya. Although we have never met, you have seen my face before. It is the same face you murdered over 30 years ago. The face of my mother, Julie Otero. I will not address you as Mr. Rader because Mr. is a word of respect. As in Mr. Can you help me? Not Mr. Are you going to kill me? BTK is how you want to be known, and I will not give you that satisfaction. Rader is an appropriate name for you, as in one who invades a surprise attack. That is nothing to be proud of. Rader, when you took away my mother, you took someone who meant a lot to a lot of people. My mother loved life, her friends, a good laugh, dancing with my dad, and she loved to help people. But most of all, she loved and lived for us, her family. She showed me how to love, to be a good person, to accept others as they are, and most of all, to face your fears. I'm sure you saw that in her face as she fought to live. My mother against your gun. You are such a coward. Since they were children, my father loved my mother more than any kind of love you could ever comprehend. He adored her. To this day, I love to hear stories of how they were. My father was a hard-working man, and we always felt secure. He made sure we had what we needed, but at the same time, we understood there was always someone else more in need. My dad loved to see us having a good time, and he never passed on a dance with my mom, even in the commissary. He loved trips to the beach and to the country. We always went with friends and family. Those good times were very important to him. The thing that everyone remembers of my father is that he demanded respect, but that he gave it in return. Everyone knew you didn't mess with Joe's family. I'm sure you could feel his love for his family as you took away his last breath. You're such a coward. My sister Josie. You should not have the privilege of even saying her name. Such a sweet girl. All she ever wanted was to be happy and successful in school. She had dreams. She was my shadow and at the same time her own person. When we moved to Wichita, I told her that I hated it because it was so cold and people were so different. She told me, you'll get used to it. Give it a chance. That was part of Josie's beauty. She always tried to see the bright side of everything. It's amazing to me that you could be so cruel to a sweet, beautiful child. His name was Joey, not Junior. But I guess it really doesn't matter to you. You took away the most lovable, fun, outgoing, friendly, and adorable little brother anyone could ever imagine. He tried so hard to keep up with Charlie and Danny. Joey was a magnet. He attracted people of all ages. He could have done something big with his life, but you took care of that, didn't you? A man with a gun against a little boy. You are definitely a coward. Rader, you not only affected my life, but you took away the joy of the ultimate grandparents, aunt and uncle relationship my children deserve. My children, my grandchildren, my nieces and nephews will be told of their family with love. You see, in my world, family is everything, not your social obligations. Just recently, I realized that I could not remember my mother's voice. It was a painful discovery. But as I put my thoughts on paper, it comes to me. I am my mother's voice, and I know we've been heard.